In this first episode of 2026, we are kicking off a new series that we'll be returning to periodically during the course of the year. This series will walk through a list of tactical subjects that we believe the everyday churchman ought to have a basic knowledge of. As we have seen firsthand here at Refuge Church over the past few months, taking public stands for truth involves real consequences. True statements regarding sexuality, race, nationhood, or any other of a list of topics will cause the revilers, protesters, and demons of our age to respond with shameless vitriol. Our charge as Christians is not to back away from these touchy subjects, but rather to stand firm in the face of these enemies and continue to speak the hard truth. We cannot do this recklessly or blindly, though. We must go about the task with wisdom, counting the costs and preparing as best we can. Preparation involves knowledge, skill sets, coordination, and tools. This series will cover all of these categories, often blending them together depending on the particular subject. Today, to get things started, we'll be looking at a host of weapons optics that are generally referred to as red dots. We'll talk about why we think this subject is relevant, what the different classifications are, and how we think through deciding between the different options that are available. With that said, Happy New Year, and welcome to the Tactical Series. All right, guys, welcome back to the Hard Men Podcast. My name is Tate Taylor. I'm here as always with Pastor Ethan Sin. He's rocking the new crew neck Brutal American. It's one of one. You can't find those anywhere, but it is pretty cool.
We should publish them. They're a great sweatshirt.
We probably do need to do one of those. These actually are on pre-order right now. If you want to go get one of these off the brutalamerican.co website. We did a short run of them. Evan, who's in the room, has one, and like 10 people got them. So I've been asked a handful of times if we could get these back. So if you want one of the Pearl Snaps, they are available. Speaking of Brutal American, just want to give a huge shout out to all of the people who have signed up on the Patreon for us here at Hard Men. In the last half of the year in 2025, we saw a lot of growth, and it's been a whole lot of fun making content for that. So really massive appreciation for you guys. Thank you so much for the support. And hopefully we'll just be able to continue to turn it up this year, which is kind of the idea with this. The after hours for this has already been recorded. We went to the range, the two of us, Ben was there, our buddy Nick was there, Evan came and filmed with us. And basically we went through and got a bunch of different specifics and got to shoot and do some different stuff with these optics that we're going to talk about today. And so all the specs on all of that stuff and us kind of talking through the specifics of each one will be in the after hours show. If you want to go check out the Brutal American there on the Patreon, definitely go check that out. This will be more of an introduction to the series, and then, why do we think this whole subject matter is important? And then just general principles about if you're going to go buy a rifle optic, kind of what we're looking at here in the red dot category.
And when you say series, they're not going to be sequential. Like this is not all you're going to get for the next, 8 weeks or whatever.
Yeah.
It's something we're going to do throughout this year, going through, we did the everyday carry. Everyman's everyday carry, right?
The Everyman's Guide to Everyday Carry. Yeah.
And got really good response from that, and people wanted more stuff in that direction. So this will be throughout the year, every so often, but getting more into the home defense and preparedness and tactical stuff, at least from our experience and things that we've done and tried. And that was kind of the idea behind this first red dot one, was starting to dip our toes in the water, going out to the range. Not every exhaustive red, like there's thousands and thousands of red dots on the market, but at least one from each main category, some of the budget options, some of the more buy once, cry once options, and going through and showing them off, showing lots of good footage of the dot, going through the specs, and then price point. We can talk price points probably more today, and durability, but shooting them, testing them out, and then giving kind of our feedback on what we like. Yeah, absolutely.
I do want to talk a little bit about why this kind of general subject matter is important right now. We touched on it a bit in the cold open with some of the stuff that we've experienced firsthand here recently, but I think it's actually larger than that. Sort of the general movement of the nation or you could even say just the West in general is more and more aggressive towards us, like us as a people, for sure, like Western Christians. The opposition continues to be more and more flagrant, and the most basic statement of truth is met with a lot of aggression.
Death threats.
Yeah.
Literal death threats. Now, whether they can back it up, whether they mean it, whether they're just hiding behind the keyboard, but you have to on some level take it seriously.
Yeah, you can't just brush it off and act like it's nothing.
No. And we saw this maybe most poignantly last year after the Charlie Kirk assassination, where you had all these leftists get online and cheer for it and celebrate it, and then basically call for the death of anybody who's like him. And we're definitely right of Charlie Kirk. And so if they want Charlie Kirk dead, they want you and all of us and our families dead as well. And you saw this. It wasn't like the one-off people. This was a large percentage of our nation.
Yeah, I think to that point, these were quote unquote everyday people that were making these kinds of statements and like dancing on TikTok about the fact that this guy had been shot and killed. And that means that you, as an everyday person who stands in opposition to that, they hate you too. You're not as big of a target, but they hate you too. And it means that you're actually involved in this. There's no sideline. There's no neutrality here. You're on one side of this conflict or the other. And to be complacent and act like it's not happening is to side with the opposition.
Yeah, I think it's not an option to sit on the sidelines. I think that it's something where you have the ability to be prepared. You have the ability to defend yourself and defend your family. So it's actually a mandate. It's actually a Christian mandate to prepare yourself, to train, to have the equipment. And so that's kind of the primer. That's kind of what we're interested in doing, is saying like, maybe this isn't something you're into. Maybe it's not, you don't sit at home and watch GunTube videos all the time. And that's fine. But there has to be at least a certain level of proficiency in this area of, can I protect my family? Can I provide for my family if things go wrong, when things go wrong? Am I passing on these abilities and skills to my children?
Right. I think to kind of move things back towards the middle of the road here a little bit, because that comes off as very aggressive and like everything's this dire situation. Also, this stuff is just a lot of fun. It's a cool thing to be interested in. It's something that is accessible to you. Obviously, there are different laws in different states and all that different stuff. So you have to kind of pay attention to what's going on in that sense. But also the way that those things move back towards just a base constitutional Second Amendment right is for more citizens to be aware of what's going on and to be angry about the tyranny that we see from our federal government or even from our state governments.
I think as well that the time that we live in, all this stuff is accessible. The tax stamp for cans just went away, and you can buy them online, and you can have them shipped, to your local gun dealer, and you can do, transfer guns, and you can buy ammo, and you can buy large quantities of ammo, and you buy high capacity magazines, and all these things that in a heartbeat could go away. A couple of years, new administration, they cracked down the ATF. Like, it's not unreasonable to think that the ability to acquire just the equipment is going to go away in our lifetime. So, you don't want to get down the road 5-10 years and say, man, I wish I would have invested some money in this, just like you do a vehicle, or just like you do tools, or just like you do anything else. It's just another piece of equipment or a tool that gives you the ability for agency, which we've talked at length about. Yeah,
for sure. And there's a host of different topics that kind of fit under this preparedness, kind of tactical subject matter. But I think that stuff like rifle setup, optics, what you should have in your truck on a regular basis, like what's your civilian kit look like? We've even had questions about church security, what we're doing here to kind of combat some of the threats that we've seen. How are we going about trying to effectively coordinate with the community here so that we can communicate effectively, and all of those things. All of that stuff that we'll try to kind of come back to and address throughout the course of the series.
Yeah, I think that's the thing to remember is like some of it is hypothetical. Some of it is what's most likely or most dangerous. But a large part of this is our experience. We have seen threats against the church. We've seen people trying to come in who shouldn't be in there. We've seen bad actors. Like, we've seen protests. Like, these are things that we've dealt with this year.
Yeah.
And armed people outside of our church trying to prevent a sportsman got on the Lord's Day. Like that.
Yeah.
That's not hypothetical. That's real life.
They're real on the ground. Like these people are trying to intimidate and yell at and scare people away from the gathering on Sunday mornings. And it's happened repeatedly. There's different levels of this group showing up. Sometimes there's 5 people there, but sometimes there's 25, and they're dancing outside in crazy costumes and waving Antifa flags and all the rest of it right on the steps of our church, not far from where we're sitting right now. So it's definitely something that we've had to think more seriously about. It was already on our radar, but if you're going to be in the arena, you have to have the tools and the training and the skills and the mindset and all of the knowledge and stuff to the best degree that you possibly can. And so that's kind of what the series is aimed at. We think that this is not going to stop with us. Like any small town pastor or any church that decides to take a stand and make a strong statement of truth and refuse to move on it is going to be met with stuff like this moving forward. I don't think the situation is going to simmer down. I think it's going to get worse. If we have an administration change and we have a host of Democrats elected in the next few elections, things are just going to continue to get worse. And so we need to be ready for that course of action.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe it doesn't become as bad as it could during our lifetime.
Right.
But then there is also the duty for preparing our children and equipping them and making sure that they have what they need. Maybe it happens in our kids' lives or our grandkids' lives, but what can we do now to prepare them for that fight?
Exactly.
I think we talked about the pistol. We talked about everyday carry and all those things. And hopefully people, either went out and got stuff they didn't have or are thinking more seriously about it. But I think that we have to continue to evolve on this topic, mainly because the pistol is not a primary weapon, right? We carry them because it's convenient. We carry them because you can conceal it. We carry it because it's light and not that cumbersome. But at the end of the day, I think every man also has to have a rifle. And that's why we're starting off with red dots, because you think about any engagement you have, you go out and you practice your bill drill, 6 rounds. Most guns, you get 2 of those, right? Mm-hmm. You might have a couple left over, 15, 18 round capacity. Maybe people are carrying ones that hold 11 or 12. And so maybe you get 2 bill drills, right? That's maybe 2 threads. And that's how you're training. That's how you'd shoot in a defensive, situation. So I think the important thing to remember is that the pistol is the backup. The pistol exists to get to the rifle. And whether that's in your truck or in your home or wherever you are, comparing the ability to stop threats, comparing the ability to address multiple threats, any kind of range, it's non-comparable.
Yeah, I think to put it in, a different category, a different time period, the pistol, like a 9mm that you're carrying around, is like the dagger, but it's sort of the second thing that you go to when your broadsword's taken away or your bow breaks, right? Like this is the primary weapon, and proficiency needs to be high with both, but to have only the secondary and never consider the primary is a mistake.
Yeah, absolutely. Think about the capacity, 30, 40 round magazines, very common for rifles. That's, 5 bill drills or 6 bill drills or 7 bill drills. And then the ability to carry extra ammo and high capacity magazines. You can't compare it to what you can do with a pistol. Now, it doesn't mean we're carrying rifles every day. We're like, it's not practical at this point, but it does mean, you should be thinking through, how does my pistol enable me to get to my rifle?
Well, to give an example, a lot of people shy away from even using something like this for home defense. But we had Marty Combs on, who shot the bear in his kitchen after it broke into his house in the middle of the night. And for good reason, he uses an AR platform for self-defense and especially in a home defense situation. And thankfully, that was the case because there was a black bear in his kitchen. And so it's going to take a little more stopping power to kill something like that. And I'm assuming the results would have been different had he been shooting that thing with a 9mm pistol.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, people obviously make bear rounds. We had a company
right
out here for the conference who makes 9mm and 10mm, bear rounds. But That's not common. And at the end of the day, what would you rather have? And neither is a bear breaking into your house very common.
Right.
But you do think about whatever the scenario is, what would you rather have?
Yeah.
And what is the other guy going to have? And do you want to meet him on level ground, or do you want to have the advantage? And so I think that's part of the conversation is every advantage that is offered to you within reason, you should take advantage of.
Yeah, absolutely. By the way, that ammunition company is called Redmond Ordnance.
Yep.
They're really cool people. They're our guys, and they do make some cool ammo. So definitely check them out. Going into kind of principles behind these red dot optics. First of all, everyone literally just says red dot, and they could mean a host of different things. So we'll get into that. But what are kind of the different categories when people are referring to just a big lump of different optics and they say red dot? What are the different things they might be talking about?
Yeah, and this goes into everything that we covered at the range.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously you have your no power red dot, right? Your battery powered single dot, or you have your donut of death, or you have multiple different reticles for different ranges. But basically it's no magnification, and this is going to be probably the most common, the most prevalent, the ubiquitous kind of thing. So we went through Romeo 4s and Romeo 5s, and we went through everything up to and including the
Aimpoint T2.
Aimpoint T2. Yeah, I don't even know what my red dot's called. And so different categories of battery life and durability and cost. I think that's your basic thing, and probably what belongs on most rifles, right?
I would agree with that.
Most people probably ought to have an 11.5-inch rifle in 5.56 in their home. And you could say, well, it should be 12.5 or 13.7 or 14.5 or whatever. But I would say most people, if you're going to go out and buy a rifle, 11.5 is probably the way to go for a lot of reasons. Home defense, operating inside your home, adding a can to it without a 16-inch gun becoming a 24-inch gun or whatever. So I think that for the ranges we're talking about, and we talked about this on the range, but like iron sights. You should be able to hit man-sized targets out to 300 or 400 yards with iron sights. That would be not crazy. Every Army Joe can do that, right? Every infantry guy can do that. And so if you add the red dot to it, no magnification, it still should be an achievable thing. So thinking about most likely, most of the targets are going to be way inside 300 yards. So no magnification red dot is probably what belongs on most guys' home defense setups. Mm-hmm. We go through the holographic sights. Or EOTech is one of the main companies that does holographic sights.
The reason that we kind of brought this up is that most of the time people refer to, like, especially the layman, which I get it. I've been here too, but like the EOTech, we just kind of refer to those as red dots. Technically, they're holographics. They actually have a T-shirt on their website. I was looking at some of their stuff earlier, and it's an EOTech, basically like blueprint printed on the shirt, and it just says not a red dot. So they're pretty funny, but they kind of fall under this like general category.
Yeah, similar in the sense that there's no magnification until you add a magnifier to it. Mm-hmm. But then the way the emitter works is different. The way it's broadcasting the light that you can see, but maybe on a holographic sight on the muzzle end, there's less red dot light available. So at night or something like that. So I think the biggest thing, obviously that's cool. Different things on if you have an astigmatism or you have different vision. Sometimes green I've heard works better for some people. But basically red dot, green dot, whatever color it is, something like that, where you have no magnification. EOTechs are going to have your donut of death, easier for aiming, easier for quick acquisition. I really like, have you seen their danger close reticle?
Is it the one with the lower dot?
I think it's basically like your normal donut of death, like 68 MOA ring or something like that.
I think so. That sounds right.
But then it has a chevron below the ring.
Oh yeah, you've shown me this before.
And the cool thing about that, so one thing I don't think we talked about at all is the height over bore problem. Mm-hmm. And so if any of your engagements are close, you're basically aiming, potentially you want to take a headshot at close range. Your dot is above the target, which is a hard thing. You have to train to it, and it's a hard thing to practice. So they put this chevron at the bottom of the reticle, and basically you just put that when you're close range, danger close reticle, you put that on where you want to hit, and because of the height over bore, like that's where your bullets are going to go. So that's a cool feature that people are coming out with ACSS reticles and different things like that. But it's another cool feature that EOTech offers. Next one would be the LPVO, so the low power variable optic. People have a lot of opinions about these. I think for a longer gun, a 14.5 or 16-inch gun, they make sense, or they can. But basically anything from a 1 to 6, 1 to 8, 1 to 10 scope. And these we included in the red dot category because a lot of them do have illuminated reticles, but they also have your etched, crosshairs or reticles or whatever they have in there, they're etched. So even if your battery dies, they're still going to work.
Yeah, you're still going to have a sight picture if the battery dies. Whereas something with a red dot, if the battery goes dead, you're just looking at a sight picture. Like it's just a general area that you're looking at. Whereas with an LPVO, you'll still have crosshairs.
Downside to these would be, you have more to maneuver, right, to increase or decrease the power.
Yeah.
So when I set these up, I'll do some kind of offset red dot that is just on. So it's a backup, but it's also for your close range where your eye relief doesn't matter on the scope. The eye relief does matter. So that it's an option, especially for the longer rifles, I think.
I really like the LPVO on my 16-inch that I have. I like it for different applications. Obviously, I wouldn't use it for a home defense weapon setup, but I've used it to kill lots of coyotes and pigs and things like that. They're really useful for that sort of like reflexive. You don't know what the range is going to be. It might be pretty close, or it might be you reaching out, a decent distance. They work really, really well for that. So
the other thing on this would be maybe you already have your rifle, 16-inch, 18-inch rifle, and it's got a scope on it like this. Maybe it's a three power or 1 power. You don't have to go out and buy a new gun. You don't have to go buy an 11.5 inch and put a Romeo 4, Romeo 5 on it. They make basically mounts to mount a RMR or a Holosun at like a 35 or 45 degree angle. And so that gun now becomes a whole lot easier to shoot at close range, where you're not like, the least I can go is 3 power, the least I go is 4 power. You have a close range. So that, that's another way to take a gun and make it more useful for home defense application.
So this is an interesting thing. So in that same setup, Jason, I've heard talk about, even with his hunting rifle, will do this, where he's got a red dot offset even on his hunting rifle, which is 20 power or more scope. And the reason that he does it is that he wants to be able to find the general area when he finds an animal, which I've never heard anyone else do that. I'm sure it's more common than I am aware of, but I think that's a really cool idea, to be able to use your red dot to find an animal in a general area, and then know that you're going to be on it when you go to your, multi-power scope. That's a really cool application of that.
Yeah, especially on a spotting scope, where you're like, I see it in the binoculars, I see it in the rangefinder, but how do I get it in my 20 to 60, spotting scope? And that's something I think he's going to build me a mount for the spotting scope, so you can put your little red dot on top of that and just put that on the area. And I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
We talked through backup iron sights as well. I think reiterating, if there is rail space for backup iron sights and you don't have some kind of monster high, red dot where you can't go witness, or you don't have an etched reticle where you're going to have something even if the battery fails, I think it makes sense for our applications to have a backup set of sights. And we talked about the Magpul makes them; they're really inexpensive. Or Sidewinder has their aluminum and they flip to the side, and so they can be used even if they're blocked by your primary, scope or high mount red dot. You can still use them at a 45 offset, and they're really cool. The other one that we go through and test out is the ACOG. So the one we had was a fixed 4 power by 32 LED. So it's battery powered. It's not they make tritium ones. They make all kinds of different ones that will work without batteries. But the one we had is a fixed 4 power, and kind of like the LPVO, not adjustable like the LPVO is, but it gives you 3 or 4 power magnification. It's got a nice reticle in there for aiming at different distances. On any of these, I will set up a 45 offset. I've tried to put the RMR on top, and I found it to be too high. So I'll do the 45 offset, and that's mainly because of the eye relief on the ACOG. And you saw this when we shot them. The eye relief is not great. You really have to get your face right up to the scope in order to see it all, the whole picture, which is probably the biggest downside. The other interesting thing, I think I told you this, when we were shooting the ACOG, it was off, right?
It was way off.
It was way off. Like at 100 yards, it was probably
15
yards. Yeah, 15 feet left.
Yeah.
And I was like, what's going on? I think all my guns are zeroed. I think they're all like, battery life is good. And I'm like, they're all ready to go. And so I'm like, I'm embarrassed because like my scope is like, it's not a little bit off, it's way off.
Yeah.
And so we took it to the bench and go to sight it in. Anyway, the windage adjustment just failed. Couldn't adjust the left and right at all. And I had a 35 offset RMR that was still on. I was afraid that I like messed up my gun by adjusting the muzzle device and ruined the gun or the barrel. But the RMR was still on, took it off, put it on another gun, still couldn't get it to move. And so basically discerned it was, a failure on the ACOG, which was really surprising to me. If I was going to bet of all those optics we had out there of like, which one do you want in the nuclear, blast?
Yeah.
It would have been the ACOG.
Yeah.
And so I was really surprised about that. Obviously, Trichicon's going to take it back and fix it and make it right. But that was definitely surprising to me.
It is so strange because we had a handful of optics out there, and everyone knows the Trichicon stuff as being just bomb proof. And specifically that optic it's like built for military use. It's a duty use optic, and it's the only one that we had issues with. So it was just like, it was kind of ironic, but it was still fun to do all the testing.
I think it's maybe another good point of like this stuff. It's not enough to own it and just be a safe queen. You actually have to test it out and take it out and train with it, because that's the thing is like all these things eventually fail. Lights fail and barrels get shot out and triggers have issues and, optics have issues, and you drop it and you don't know it's all like, it's one of those things like you can't just set it and forget it. You have to actually keep using it. Just like anything else that you have, it takes maintenance, it takes cleaning, it takes training. And so it's just another good reminder for that.
Yeah, absolutely. So for us in reference to particularly this kind of group of optics, I think it's really important to kind of ask the question, what are the most likely or the most dangerous courses of action that we're going to run into, in our context? For us, what are we really looking for in a setup, and specifically in an optic in this category? Yeah,
I think, most people probably start in their home, in their bedroom, and work out from there and say like, if there are threats, when there are threats, what do I have to prepare for? And so setting up your rifle with the proper optic on it for that situation to give you the best advantage possible. So I think anybody, potentially could have a home invasion. That's probably what most people are thinking through is like, if somebody breaks in my home with the intent to take my things or hurt my family, how would I stop that threat? Mm-hmm. And so I do think, that middle of the night, you wake up because you hear, someone kicking in the door or glass shattering or dog barking. Like that's probably maybe the most likely and potentially the most dangerous. And so I think that's probably where most people should be building a primary home defense rifle around something like that. Mm-hmm. And the thing about that one is it also applies basically to very similar to truck gun setup, or very, very similar to a lot of other scenarios you could think of where you're like, I wish I had a rifle here.
Yeah. I think your context really matters here. Like, do you live on 30 acres in Kansas where there are no trees and it's super flat and you can see half a mile? Or do you live in a context more like mine now, which is, on a pretty heavily populated street? It's small lots. They're not huge houses. Everything's pretty compact. I think from my front porch, like the furthest shot I could take is less than 200 yards.
Yeah.
Right. Like I would have to move out into the street and look down the street in order to take a shot further than that. So from my property, I'm probably not going to need something with magnification. The other thing is that I think, you hear stories. For example, there's a church shooting years ago in Texas where a guy ended up like responding to it himself and using a rifle, but he had to move in order to get on that target. And we have neighbors that are really close friends of ours. They go to the church. They live right next door. It's not outside the realm of possibility that I would be responding to a break-in at their house.
Right.
Right. And so kind of thinking through the context and going, all right, what's going to be the most useful in the situation that's going to happen right here around my home or even around my vehicle is really important. And it might be different, if you have a different context. You guys have more property now. The homes are more spread out. There's more land around you. Range might come into play, depending on the situation for you guys, probably more than it would in our situation. So I think just kind of thinking through those things and then making an educated decision based off of that context is important.
I think the other thing you can do is a lot of this stuff is like dual use or multiple use, where we all don't have enough money to own one of each, 8-inch 300 blackout and 10.
he's waiting on me to give him a really hard time because he's this guy.
No, I don't. But you can't have one for every scenario you can come up with in your mind. So a lot of them you do have to build out to be dual use. So if you live on a couple acres and your chicken coop is, maybe 100 yards away and you're shooting coyotes who are trying to get in your chickens, and then maybe you have to think about how do I attach a thermal to the front of this LPVO, and now you have a dual use gun or something like that where it's not. It can be used for home defense, but it can also be used to protect your livestock or, shooting varmints or hogs or whatever you have. And so, you think through those different things and there are ways to make a gun such a Frankenstein where it's like not good for anything.
Right. And it's so heavy and cumbersome that it's not really useful anymore.
But I do think thinking through what else can I do to maximize the capability and the usefulness of this gun is also helpful in thinking through how do I start with a red dot? Well, I want to put a thermal in front of it. Well, then I need some magnification, right? And I can't just use my thermal as a primary, the primary scope because it doesn't work in the daytime or it doesn't work until you like fire it up. And
yeah.
And so just thinking through those things, and I can add a 45 offset red dot RMR Holosun 507 and not very expensive and not very much weight, but I've just added capability at a very, very close range where maybe my gun's set up for a little bit further.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I grabbed my 16-inch rifle with my 1-6 on it a lot when we lived in Texas. We were on property. There's a decent amount of land around us. I could take a 400-yard shot from my back porch, and I knew everyone that lived around there, so we would have pigs trying to root up the yard, or there's a coyote that comes through and is checking out your chicken coop or whatever. And so that context demanded I be able to reach out a little bit further comfortably. And now I don't have those things to worry about. So the context is different.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think it would be, we go through all the different optics on the range and we kind of talk about specs. One thing we didn't cover that maybe would be good to cover now would be like different price points and then durability. Because those are things that you can go and find them online and try to find a good price. My opinion is that nobody should be paying MSRP for any of this stuff. You ought to have, you have these channels on Twitter like Mr. Guns and Gear that are always showing steep discounts on this stuff. So make your list, build it out. What do I want? What do I need? And then wait for these things to go on sale, because paying full price for any of this stuff is a mistake.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And then the durability aspect is another one that it kind of goes with brands, right? Different brands are known for being really durable and made for the warfighter and things like that. And it doesn't, for most people's applications, probably unnecessary to buy the most expensive thing and the most high quality thing. I would much rather save money on an optic and buy a better rifle if I'm, weighing the different costs there. And, you know, at the end of the day, what you don't want to do is buy something that you're just going to throw away. Buy something you're like, man, this doesn't work. The battery doesn't last. It doesn't hold zero. Like that. You don't want to waste money on stuff like that. So you want to get something that's going to work and that you can rely on, but not necessarily like breaking the bank, at least on optics, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think just going as cheap as humanly possible with this stuff is definitely a mistake, because even the cheap stuff is expensive to some degree or another. Like there isn't anything that's going to just like, you're going to throw $20 out there and get something that is usable. So if you're going to be spending, you know, a chunk of money on something, you might as well get something that is going to be quality and that you can use and not just use this week, but for, you know, an extended period of time and trust when you go to use it.
So we'll run through some of the optics that we shot at the range and covered in terms of their durability, and then we'll go through price points. But the first one would be the EOTech. So we had an XPS2 out there, the 300 blackout version, which is cool because it has the two different dots. So you can have a 0 for supers and you have a 0 for subs, and you don't have to have different optics or different zeros. So I really like that. They're also known for being really durable, rugged, you know, aluminum housing. Water resistant up to 3 meters. And then it's also fog proof. So they pump nitrogen into the glass. And so with the better optics, I think you're going to find that in all situations, it's raining and it's cold, and, you know, you don't have to worry about fogging up your optic and making it basically useless. Mm-hmm. On the cheapest end, the Romeo 5 is probably the cheapest one. Like I think so. They made a version 2 of that last year, which is also right around $100. But it's IPX7, so 1 meter for 30 minutes, which again, most people aren't swimming with their rifles, and that's not why they care. It's more of like, if I go and shoot in the rain or shoot in the snow, is this going to ruin the electronics? Right. Says it's fog proof as well. You can look at the construction of these and like, they're fine. I've never had an issue with one. For $100, like you can get the V1s for like $80 if you can still find them. Never had an issue with it. It holds 0. But I think in terms of durability, I sure you could get online and find people beating the crap out of these things. And I just don't think it would hold up compared to like an EOTech that has the shroud around it and like it's a thick aluminum housing. Right. So we shot the Romeo 8T, which is maybe their latest.
By SIG.
Yeah, by SIG. I like SIG optics. I think they do a good job. It's got the whole, you know, closed emitter. So unlike some of your, you know, RMRs and things like that, they're going to remain cleaner. And I think that this is important on a rifle. I think it's important on a pistol as well, or it can be. But it's not something that you're picking up and cleaning every day, and you don't want it to collect dust in there. So I think having the closed emitter, this one has a better IPX rating, IPX8. So it doesn't say the exact depth, but that's like a known standard. This one passed a mil standard 1810 durability test, and then it's also fog proof. So this one, more similar to the EOTech in terms of like the look and construction of it. So I would expect it to be a little bit more durable than maybe the Romeo 4 or 5.
Cool optic.
The other cool thing about the 8 is when you use SIG's magnifier with it, it'll basically, I think it uses magnets, but it'll change your reticle. So if you're magnified, you put the magnifier on the red dot. Now you have your circle, and you have like some different red dots below your main red dot for different distances, known distances for like 5.56, which is cool. And then when you take it away, you just get the single, or you can set it up how you want, but you can have the donut with a single dot or just a dot, which may be more useful at close range.
Yeah, cool.
Next one, we went through the Aimpoint Micro T2. I had never owned an Aimpoint. I bought one this year, mostly because I'm like, I want to try out some different ones. I want to have experience. You can see what other people think about them, but at the end of the day, like trying them out yourself is there's something to be said about that. I think they also have a pretty high reputation for being durable.
Yeah.
Sealed tube, hard anodized aluminum housing. These are submersible up to 25 meters. So, significantly better IPX rating than anything else we've talked about so far. But both their magnifier and their red dot are really durable and made to withstand a beating. The ACOG that we had out there is a 4x32 LED TA02. Again, forged aluminum. It exceeds military standards for waterproofing. A lot of sources list it 100 meters. And for how you could throw it into a 100-meter deep lake and it would still work. I mean, I think there's been examples of people like losing them or finding them after years out in the mud, and they still work. Yeah. This was the only one we had an issue with, but I think that's a one-off thing. Dry nitrogen filled as well, so you wouldn't expect it to worry about fogging. The LPVO we had out there is a Credo, the Trijicon Credo 1-6 by 24. Cool reticle in there, fog proof, 3 meter waterproof. And then again, like I always expect scopes and things that have magnification to have more things that can go wrong in them.
Yeah, they're just bigger. There's more moving parts. There's more stuff that can go wrong.
But it's got a hard aluminum tube. It's coated, and so yeah, I think as far as scopes go, it's probably on the durable side of things. Yeah. And it's the nice thing is that even if the electronics fail, you have your etched reticle in there. It's got a pretty cool reticle in there as well. Yeah, for bullet drop.
I really like the reticle on that one actually. A little bit different.
We had a couple pistol red dots, functionally pistol red dots, but because we'll set them up to be 45 or 35 offset as either a backup or as a primary close red dot on something with magnification. So we had the original RMR Type 2, the RM06, which is a 3.25 MOA dot. It's adjustable. Downside on this one is you have to take it off. The battery's on the bottom, so you have to take it off. But they're known for being particularly durable because of that shape that they have on the top. Waterproof up to 20 meters. And then we also had the HD, which the HD is the one that came out. I think it was this year or it could have been last year.
Also Trijicon RMR, just the HD version.
Yeah. And they fixed every problem that I think people had with the original RMR. So the battery compartment's on top, the light, where it's reading the light emitted is on the front, which is cool because it's not just looking up and saying like, what's the light above me, but it's looking where you're looking, where your gun's pointing. And if you're looking down a dark alleyway, then it's going to, adjust the reticle appropriately for that.
That's one of the coolest features that I've seen on a red dot, in my opinion. Just being able to play with yours and like kind of walk around a building with it. You come into a really well lit room and it brightens. You go into a dark hallway and it dims down. And you don't have to do that. It's happening in real time and it's very fast.
Yeah, it's very fast. There's a bunch of features how you can make the outer ring, not as bright and the dot brighter or vice versa, or you can take away the dot and just take away the ring and just do the dot. The other thing, they told me this at SHOT Show, but you have this kind of same shape, right? Which is, apparently like one of the most difficult red dots to break because of the shape. But on the HD, they put this line on top. And so basically what they said was if you use that line, say your red dot fails or your battery dies and you put that line on your target and then you basically make it flat on top, that is your aim point. So it kind of has your backup iron sights built into. Now it's not going to be super accurate, but if you pull the gun out and the red dot's dead, you have something to aim off of if you don't have suppressor height sights.
Really cool feature. Super simple, but really, really useful.
I have a hard time putting RMRs on as like a backup on rifles, but you can do the same thing with the Hollow Sun 407, 507. The same thing. You just don't get the durability that you get from Trijicon.
Right.
Ben brought out his 226X carry, right? Which he bought this year. By the way, coolest gun that we have in the church.
Not even close.
Not even close. It's basically a 229 sized double action, single action, in terms of barrel length, but it's got a longer grip on it. And so it's 18+1, really cool, really, really great carry gun.
It shoots so well. It's more than just fun to shoot. It's like it's just really, really nice. It's so smooth.
For out of the box, he did nothing to it.
Yeah.
Like it's a slick gun and it's a great gun to carry. So
Great trigger.
reason I bring it up, he has a Romeo X Pro on it, right? It came on it. It's got the SIG lock for that particular gun, but you could use that for other ones. Reason we brought that one out is that was probably the only enclosed pistol optic that we had, which is probably another consideration as a 45 offset or 35 offset, is having just like we said for the main optic, for the offset one, to have an enclosed one. It's going to stay cleaner. If you're in the dirt and the mud and the dust, like it's going to stay cleaner and be more useful. So I don't know I have to look at what they retail at, but they're within reason. They're certainly cheaper than RMRs.
Yeah.
Same thing on those. Pretty strong aluminum housing, IPX7 rating. And so I think they're going to be relatively durable. So in terms of like, we're talking about durability and waterproof rating and fog proof and all that, I think, you have different tiers, and doesn't mean you have to go out and buy the most expensive or most battle proven optic that exists. I don't think that's practical for most people. But I do think at the top of the list, you'd have your ACOG, you have your aim point, you have, RMR, and then maybe the SIG Romeo 8 would be up there. And then second tier, honestly, most people would put EOTech up there as well.
Yeah.
But then, second tier or third tier would be probably like the Romeo 4, Romeo 5 in terms of like durability. They're significantly less expensive, and so you don't necessarily expect as much. But I do think that's probably the main thing you're paying for is durability when you get into the higher priced optics. All right, we'll do a quick rundown on price points. So, like I said, I wouldn't pay MSRP for any of these. I would find deals and find somebody in your circle probably should get a FFL so they can have access to like dealer pricing and be a good friend there. But no, I mean, even finding law enforcement discounts and veteran discounts and things like that, like all these things can be had at significantly less than MSRP. So the EOTechs, again, all these things have a range, right? But you can get into EOTechs. I think the guys that have been buying them from me recently have paid $400 to $500 for those. Okay. And so MSRP can be $650, $700, depending on which one you're going for. But I would be happy paying $400 to $500 for that. Romeo 5s, Romeo 4s. Do you remember what you paid for your 4?
I have a hard time remembering. I know that I got a deal on it. They MSRP quite a bit higher in price than what I paid for mine. Mine's the Romeo 4 XT Pro. So it's basically a beefed up, better battery power, higher durability,
more reticles,
more reticle options. And I believe this one does better under night vision as well than the Romeo 5 does. But I want to say it was under $400, but okay. I could be off there a little bit. But I like I said, I didn't pay MSRP for it. Right. I went and found a deal on it, and I believe I did it like early in the spring. There was some sort of sale going on, and if you're following the right sites and stuff, and you're subscribed to the right newsletters and things like that, they're constantly rolling out deals. They're trying to get through inventory. So
all these like all these guys are constantly, Black Friday deal and Thanksgiving deal and Christmas deal and New Year's deal and all the different, Martin Luther King Jr. deal.
There's something on sale all the time.
So put in your cart and just wait for the right time. The 5s are significant. I didn't know that the 4 XT Pro was that much more than the 5, because the 5s can be had at right around $100.
I should look it up real quick, but I want to say here, I'll look up what the XT Pro is MSRP.
While you do that, micro T2, that's what I have on this MCX here. I think I paid about $850 for it. Usually they retail right around $1,000. And then the magnifier, I think they're, probably around 400. The thing is with magnifiers, like SIG has them. Lots of people have magnifiers that you can get into for less than $200.
Yeah.
And they're all 3 power, 4 power, 5 power. But I think, you're paying for glass quality in that, you're paying for, anti-fog, you're paying for durability. But at the end of the day, if you just want a magnifier, they can be found for $150.
So right now on the Primary Arms site, the Romeo 4 XT Pro is $580. is what they have it listed at. But like I said, I think I paid at least $200 less than that when I bought mine.
Well, even the 8T, a couple guys have been buying the 8T that we shot, and I think they're retailing at $500 or $600, and I think that they paid $325 or $350 for them. So, you can find really good deals on, especially on all the accessories, optics included. We shot the ACOG, the 4x32 LED. Street price has them just over $1,000. I found them for, $900, $950, in that range. If you can keep it under $1,000 for an ACOG, I think that's probably a pretty good deal. But then it's like anything else. What's the magnification? What are the features? What kind of illumination does it have? They can be up to, way more than that.
Yeah, there's so many different variations.
LPVO. So we shot the Credo, the Trijicon Credo 1:6x24. And you can get a 1:8 or a 1:10 or, all those different, and everybody makes them. Primary Arms makes some really good ones. I think Loopold makes them. Vortex makes them. So there's all kinds of people out there that make these kinds of things. But for the Credo, I think, advertised price is just over $800. I think I found it for $600. But then it's like anything else. You can find it for $200 if you want to. RMRs. I think if you can get an RMR for around $400 for the original one, I think that's probably a pretty good deal. And the thing is, I do have a lot of Holosuns, 407, 507, things in that range. But they've kind of gone up in price a little bit from when I started buying them. And so if you're considering like a $280 Holosun versus like a $400 RMR, for me, that's a no brainer. Same thing on Streamlight. If you're going to pay for one of their higher end Streamlights, like the Surefires can be found for not that much more.
Yeah.
And I think that the brand quality and getting something that they're going to stand behind and that, you probably aren't going to have issues with, I think it's just worth a little bit extra to get the better one. Armor HDs are retailing right now like $700 or $800. I think they can be found for close to $600. But that is a lot for a backup site.
Yeah.
Ben's got the Romeo X Pro again. SIG has them listed for around $430, but I think they can be found for around $3 something. So that should be the target there, whether it's for the backup, the 45 offset, or for a pistol red dot. The last ones we mentioned were the Magpul backup iron sights, and which they're primarily plastic. They do make a metal version, but a lot of them are plastic, so they're fine. Or the Strike Industries Sidewinder.
Those are really cool.
They're really cool. They're about twice the price of the Magpul ones, but they have a lot more, capability. They're actually aluminum. They swing to the side. They can co-witness with a reasonable height red dot, and I like those a lot. Especially, and I think they actually take up less rail space. Yeah.
They're very small footprint on the rail.
But you can get backup iron sights for the set for less than $100. Like paying $80 for iron sights is probably pretty good.
So that's kind of a debrief as far as like pricing and, depending on your budget, where you want to be. And then also what that price is going to get you as far as durability and like lifespan of the optic. Obviously quality comes into play as well, glass and illuminators and all that stuff. But the biggest thing there is, is it going to last? Is it going to work? Is it going to come on when the Shake Awake, feature, is it going to continue to work? When I need it, is it going to perform? And so that kind of gives you an idea of where some of these ones that we tested fall as far as budget goes. But I'm curious, like for the everyday guy, say, he's buying his first or second AR, and on this one, he's going to put a red dot. Where would you go kind of as a first option, on the first AR that you're going to build or buy?
I really like the Romeo 5, and I haven't actually heard a lot of hate on it. It's under $100 for the Romeo 5, or the V2 is slightly more, like just over 100. Doesn't have a bunch of features. It does have Shake Awake, which I think is a important feature for like a home defense kind of rifle, where you want to pick it up, switch it off safe, and pull the trigger and like have something to aim at.
Also, it's it's saving a ton of battery life. And I think the Romeo 5 is like a 40,000 hour battery life. So it should last a long time.
Yeah.
And then also when you have shake awake, it's going dormant and it's not using the battery life when you're not using the optic.
Yeah, absolutely. So I like that one a lot. Obviously things you sacrifice would be like, night vision, but if, again, like kind of like we talked about, like if you're into night vision and you're going to spend $8,000 on night vision, then we're not quibbling over, do I spend $100 or $800 on the red dot?
Right.
But probably doesn't have as good on the low end for night vision. And then the other thing, we talked about this on the range, is it's obviously the brightness setting is important for night vision, but also you have to have enough clarity to be able to see through the optics. So I've had ones where like the dot will go down, but you can't actually see through the sight, which is going to also be a problem of like, can you identify the target? I can see my red dot, but I can't see through because of the inexpensive glass, or it doesn't let enough light into it. So that's another thing to consider. But the features on it are great. Shake awake is great, and it's lightweight. And I've never had an issue with one. That's where I start most people at.
I would agree. I've had a Romeo 5 on a separate rifle before, and I think my dad might have it now. But I love that Romeo 4XT Pro. Like I said, it's a little bit of a step up, but for the quality and the durability and the battery life and the added features, it's got flip down caps and protects the glass. And there's a lot about it that I really, really like. And I've had zero issues with it from the first time I put it on the gun. Took us 5 minutes to zero it, and it's been great.
Yeah.
Features are really good. And then also, as far as controls go, these are super easy to operate. They're right on top. It's not a difficult thing to get to. If you're looking through the optic, you can just dim or brighten it really easily.
I like ones on top, on the side. When you have them on the back, like my EOTech is on the back, when you put that magnifier on, they're hard to get to. Mm-hmm. And so I dislike that. But no, I think that's a great option. But it's like anything else. When you start, you like, I'm going to spend $100, and I'm going to spend $400, I'm going to spend $800. Like there's a huge range on those things. And I do think with optics, you get what you pay for. I think that it's not all marketing. I mean, that's my opinion, and we're not getting paid to say any of this by anybody.
No.
But my opinion would be, I'd rather you buy a better upper. I'd rather you buy like a mid-tier or high-quality upper and save some money on some of the other things than to have, your Trijicon on top of your PSA.
Mm-hmm. I think it's important that you say that, because I think the natural instinct when you first get started is to go, well, I want it to look cool. And then so what you do is you buy, the budget rifle, and then you try to get a whole bunch of stuff to go on it to make it feel more tactical or, cool or whatever. And that actually is the opposite of the instinct that you should have. I understand it, but what you're really doing is you're sacrificing the bones and like the real structure of the weapon for adornment. Yep. And it's more important to have strong studs in the wall than to make sure that you have like the prettiest wall paint, right?
Yep,
like
absolutely.
You want the house to stand up. And so that's kind of the same principle here, is like you want to buy better quality stuff in the rifle. And then, if it means you're going to save a little bit of money on the optic, then it's not the end of the world.
I think the other this gets outside the realm of red dots, but we're talking about home defense and rifle setups. One thing to consider is, especially if you have something like, a EOTech or an aim point that you have to turn on, which it's not that hard to do, but it's another thing you have to remember before you pull up and shoot is like, oh, I don't have a red dot. Like, what are you gonna do? Not shoot? Mm-hmm. One reason, and for most people, most pistols, I don't like visible lasers, but when you talk about a rifle setup and you put something like an NGAL or, and now we're talking about like, again, night vision money. But we have those for different reasons, for IR illuminators and IR aiming lasers, but they almost all have a visible laser. And the cool thing about that is, obviously every rifle should have your optic, should have your sling, should have your flashlight, like at a minimum. And the cool thing that Unity makes these is your switch, it has a visual override feature, meaning with your visible aiming laser and with your flashlight, they plug into the switch, or your switch plugs into them. And when you hit the button on them, you get your light and you get your visible laser. Doesn't matter what everything else is set to. Doesn't matter if you have IR, night vision, whatever. You get the light and you get the visible aiming laser. And so I like that feature for a lot of the scenarios that we're talking about, because maybe the red dot failed. Maybe you forgot to turn it on, whatever. You go light on and, with the visual override, and you get the white light and you get a visible aiming laser and you've got something to aim at.
Yep.
I think that's probably a good consideration for these types of setups.
Yeah, I really like that recommendation. I don't have one of those, but I would love to get one.
And the thing is, like, we can go way into the weeds on night vision and NGALs and illuminators and lasers and things like that. But at the end of the day, everybody makes visible lasers, and you can buy just a visible laser, and so you can have white light and visible laser and use that switch, and you can have that feature without getting into like crazy IR illuminator money.
Right. Yeah. Very cool. All right. I think that covers most of what we wanted to cover here. That kind of gives you the general principles, what we looked at, what we're talking about in the video. And for all of you guys over on the Patreon, hope you enjoy this one. It should be a lot of fun. We went out to the range here, not too far away. Obviously, we had a group of buddies there. We got to shoot all the different stuff. And I think for me, if I was going to add anything to this rifle, which is mine, it would just be something maybe like that switch. But the first thing would be a magnifier for my red dot. Hasn't been an issue so far, and we've done training where we're doing close and far drills all the way out to 150, 200, give or take. I mean, just the other day we did 100, and it's not a problem at all.
Standing unsupported.
Yeah. But I mean, if I was going to add anything, it would just be just a magnifier for that red dot.
Yeah. The nice thing about the magnifiers is a lot of them are QD. So, you throw it on there when you want it, you take it off when you don't want the weight, or it gets in the way of something else. The last thing maybe I'll bring up is like the height of the optic, which we don't cover a whole lot, but because it's a different conversation. You pick the optic you want, and then you figure out how high do I want to mount it?
Yeah.
What does it come with out of the box? Unity makes really great mounts for different optics where you can raise them up to be higher. There are some crazy ones out there where you're just like down here, and you're like,
you're nowhere near a cheek weld. It's like, it's way up. There's some pretty crazy ones. I know guys are, what are they called? The Cobra mounts.
What are they? Hydra.
Maybe it's a Hydra.
Yeah. I think, and that one's, you raise it up high enough so you can put your end gal right here, which is nice because the weight isn't out in front and it's further back by the red dot. Like, I think that's cool, but they're also, stupid expensive.
Yeah.
I do think as long, getting into the 2.26 ish to, it's not crazy high. It lets you shoot more kind of heads up. It allows you, I think, rather than having your face all the way over down, on the stock, I think you have a little bit more situational awareness. Obviously, these are meant to be shot with both eyes open. And that takes practice, right? When you tell somebody like shoot both eyes open with a red dot, whether pistol or rifle or whatever, and they've never done it before. They're used to iron sights and they're used to closing their, non-dominant eye. It's hard to get them to understand, like, no, I don't want you to focus here. I want you to focus there. And you can still see the dot in your peripheral vision. Like, it's kind of a hard concept to make people understand, but I think it allows you just a little bit more capability. So maybe in the thought process of what dot do I want, or what optic do I want, how high do I want it? Yeah.
It's definitely a consideration in that. I hadn't really thought about it this way, but you would want to stay in any sort of like combat situation where you're going to pull out a rifle and, potentially use it. You want to be in the most athletic position possible, and your head completely tilted over to one shoulder is not a very athletic position. So, height over bore obviously is a consideration there, but being able to get that red dot up off the rifle just a little bit so you can be a little more heads up is useful.
It also gives you different options when it comes to the magnifier. Right. If you like going down that road of the magnifier, if you do it high enough, you can do the flip to center, which I I think I prefer, or, otherwise you're stuck with the flip to side, which is fine. They work fine. Sometimes that can get in the way of your charging handle or other things, but when everything is centered on top, I think that's probably a better setup, but it does require a higher mount for that to work and the tuck in, behind the red dot when you're not using it.
Yeah, that's a really cool feature. It keeps things from hanging so far off the gun, less chances of it getting caught on something, or like you said, get in the way of how the weapon actually runs. So really a cool consideration if you go that way.
Yeah, I'm really excited for this year for the podcast. I think we've got a lot of cool things that we can cover. We've talked about doing an episode on sleep. We've talked about doing one on nicotine, benefits of nicotine for this area. We've like you said, what should that kit be? What should Everyman have in terms of equipment and plates, or a plate carrier, or helmet, or comms, or rifle, and just all that kind of stuff that I think is worth thinking through and giving our recommendations on what we do and what works for us. Going to the range and doing some drills, showing, hey, when we take our guys out to the range, this is how we spend our time, this is how we conserve ammo. And it's not just like go out there and blast Diet Shasta cans. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, one thing I thought about earlier is just, it's another hobby, if you will, like another way to spend your time and spend your money. But unlike a true hobby, I think that the return on investment when you need it is astronomically higher. And so I think it's a really important thing that Christian men think through. And then in terms of like allocating resources, allocating funds to this project, it's something where you say like, wow, Ethan, $800 for a red dot, like that's a lot, and it is. But when you compare it to, I'm going to go to the range and blast, a couple hundred rounds of ammo. The 9 mils, 21 cents each, and 5.56 is 45 cents each, and how quickly that adds up just to go through a couple rounds of bill drills, or anything else you do. Like we play golf. You play 10 rounds of golf in the summer. That's $800 right there, right before you buy clubs and before you buy balls,
or start losing them.
Hot dogs at the turn, like all that kind of stuff. So that's just for the greens fees and the cart rental. And so when you really compare it, like to different things that you might spend money on, and those things are great, right? Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, we love playing golf.
But at the end of the day, if it were between, am I prepared to defend my household? Am I proficient with the equipment that I have, or a hobby like golf, it's no contest.
Return on investment is very heavily swayed towards this category of stuff.
And I think that's one way to think about it. I think that's one way to talk to your wife about it is, buying stuff that's going to last generations, that your kids are going to inherit, that they're going to have access to, that maybe they wouldn't if you didn't acquire it now. And then, how do you train, if you have the skill set, how do you train them, or how do you acquire it so you can give them the ability to pass it on to their kids? I think it is an invaluable skill set that we just need to take more seriously and own. And yeah, I'm really excited to go through all this stuff.
Yeah, should be a fun year. Excited for it. Thank you guys for hanging around. Like we said, go check out the Patreon. There should be some good stuff going on over there. And we're looking forward to the rest of 2026. Thank you guys for listening. Thanks for hanging out. As always, stay frosty, fight the good fight, act like men.